Hello and welcome to the podcast. Paige is here. Thank you so much for coming, Paige.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm excited. I'm just really happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm looking so forward to hearing a little bit about your story. Let's start with where you're from, what's your background, who is Paige?
Okay, well, Paige is the oldest of four. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. So I was in 4-H. I did all of those things. And then as I got older, I did singing. So I was a competitive singer. I was a dancer. So I was always in all of those extra cur events, and I just anything artistic I loved and really craved. And yeah, that would be my background. I grew up in a middle class, white, straight home, just very typical. And yeah, I had a really great upbringing. I can't really complain about any of that. It's everything was so great.
Amazing. Well, it's a rarity, but you certainly do find it, and what a blessing that was. Now,
Mhm.
you truly came across some turmoil later on in life. It sounds like.
Mhm.
Let's kind of go back to the beginning. So, how old were you when your story that you're going to be telling today began?
Oh, so I'm going to go back to my third year of university.
Okay.
This is probably where the turmoil, the unexpected twists and turns kind of started. I mean, in high school, I had a high school sweetheart, and I thought my life was going to pan out as like a teacher. I was going to be a elementary teacher, maybe do a little bit of like singing and performing, and married, children, typical white picket fence. This is kind of like the life I had envisioned for myself. By 25, I was going to be married with with at least one kid, right? I had this
We
idea
all
in my
had that
head, and
dream. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's just the way that my parents also, right? We kind of want to follow in what we see, and that's what was modeled to me. And so in my third year of university, my breakup with my first love happened, and it really spiraled me into eating disorder behavior. So when I was about 21, I this is when the breakup happened. I actually went to Switzerland for 6 weeks. I got asked to go be a nanny, and like within
Wow.
5 days after the breakup, I was gone. And while I was there, I developed my eating disorder. And I was away from home. I was scared. I had a lot of shame about how the relationship had ended, and so I would eat my feelings. When I came back, I was about probably like 35 to 40 pounds heavier within 6 weeks. I had gained a ton of weight. Um, and after that, I decided I'm going to lose all this weight. So me and a girlfriend signed up for a bikini competition eating kind of thing. And within 7 months, I lost 70 pounds. And I was the tiniest I had ever been in my entire life, basically from starving myself. So when I finally became like this tiny, fragile human, I didn't think it was unhealthy. I thought I was very healthy, measuring, weighing, not going anywhere unless I had my food packed. I was very obsessed with food. That's what literally consumed my life. I was at the gym at 4 a.m. every day. All of my worth was based on my body. Um, and very quickly, I came to realize that my size wasn't making me happier. It didn't matter what size I was just unhappy. And because it wasn't something sustainable, I had slowly gained the weight back. As time went on, I stepped into my first teaching contract, and just the stress of that, I couldn't manage it. So I started gaining the weight. And with the shame of gaining weight, I started to find other ways to get rid of the excess food. And so I began purging and abusing laxatives. You get really creative when you're in like a disordered eating situation. And so I would like eat Splenda packets to like be satisfied with like a sweet. Um, and so at the height of my eating disorder, this would be my second teaching contract. I was 23 or 24. I was teaching up north, and there were a few tragedies that had kind of happened. My mom had her first heart attack. So my mom is a two-time heart attack survivor. And a friend of mine lost her best friend in a tragic accident. And so while I was there supporting her with the hospital and losing her friend, I was purging probably 7 to 8 times a day. I would be leaving the classroom while I was teaching to purge. I just like literally could not stomach life. And I decided that's it. I can't do this anymore. This isn't good. And I left my teaching contract to go to Bridgepoint. And Bridgepoint is an eating disorder facility in Saskatchewan. And I spent a month there in intake. Best thing I ever did for myself. I had so many people saying to me, why are you going? Like, it's all in your head. You can fix it on your own. You don't need treatment. It is all in my head. That's why I need treatment. Like, it's something I could not figure out on my own. And Bridgepoint really taught me that food is not the issue. It was everything going on inside me that I had not dealt with, and was food was just one of my ways to deal with what was happening and my loss of control. So after Bridgepoint, I came home, and I was told before, because I was anorexic, I had lost my period, I was having hormonal issues, that getting pregnant is going to be an issue. I had too much tequila one night and I became pregnant as a single woman right after my eating disorder facility treatment.
Yeah.
And I was 23 at the time, 23 when I got pregnant. That same week, the week before, or 2 weeks before, so before I got pregnant, I accepted a job in Saskatoon teaching at an arts-based school. So it was literally like my dream teaching job.
Whoa.
It was I was very excited, but it was a 1 year pending continuing. When I got pregnant, I knew I couldn't finish the year. So I knew that that was probably going to affect getting a continuing secure job. So when I became pregnant, I was single. And up until very recently, I've been single through my whole caregiving motherhood journey. And when I found out I was pregnant, I had to make a choice whether to continue the pregnancy or to go through a termination. And I think this is something that a lot of people, this is a very hard thing to share, because there's so much shame around even like the idea of considering a termination.
Right.
And I had a termination booked. I didn't go through with my termination. And I think either way, there's a hard. You have to choose your hard in that moment. There's no easy way out. Whatever choice you make is the choice you live with. And so I chose to continue my pregnancy. I was single throughout the pregnancy, and then my daughter was born premature. And she was born at 33 weeks, which landed us in the Nicu at JPCH. And she was quite early, yeah. I just remember when she was born, I didn't get to see her until 6 that night, and she was born at 10 a.m. So it was 8 hours. Went down and I saw her, and her head, like she was intubated. Her head was like a little Play-Doh ball. Like she just had so much trauma. And I remember looking and being like, what the fuck have I done? Holy shit. And it wasn't until my 5th day when I got to like hold her that I actually felt a connection with my child. I was just like in like complete stress, petrified. But I wasn't scared for the NICU because I had siblings who were all in the NICU, and they all ended up fine. There was no consequence of being early. So the idea of having a disabled, neurodivergent, medically complex child didn't even enter my mind. So we spent the 7 weeks in the NICU. We got to go home. And if you have a NICU baby, you do follow up. So kept doing the follow up, and they just kept mentioning that she was behind. But when you talk about NICU children, you talk about corrected age and gestational age. And so corrected age, she was actually on timeline. Um, and at about her 18-month appointment for therapy, I asked, why isn't Presley pulling to stand yet? Like, she's a year and a half old. I see other babies walking. I'm a little concerned, but I didn't have any flags about anything. And they said, oh, it's because she has cerebral palsy. And that was how I found out about my daughter's first diagnosis.
Wow.
S- Yeah. I had never heard of cerebral palsy before. Um, I went home and Googled it, and there's many different forms, there's many different levels of severity. And so I went like worst case like scenario, not that there is a better or worse, there just is. And within 3 weeks, I had the formal diagnosis of spastic diplegia cerebral palsy. So Presley is physically disabled. She is affected in her lower extremities and her legs, and it's with balance and walking. So she's mobile. She wears braces. At the beginning, she used a walker, and she just struggles with balance, walking, jumping. Um, those would be her main areas of concern. And lately, as she's older, she complains about pain, which is a huge piece of CP is pain management. So she was diagnosed at a year and a half old. When she turned 3, she was diagnosed with autism. And then very recently, she was diagnosed with ADHD. So over the past 5 years, I've navigated with my family supporting me 3 unexpected diagnoses for my child. And my I think what is so great about how everything has happened is I've really had to like take a look in the mirror and say, how am I responding to life?
Wow.
I had sat in victimhood for so much of my life. Victimhood serves us because it gives us reason to act or behave or conduct ourselves in a certain way. And it almost gives us permission to do things that don't necessarily align with like who we are. And so when my daughter received her first diagnosis, I was working with a nutritionist at the time. Courtney Quinn was actually like a nutritionist then, and she really helped me. And then she later transitioned into life coaching. But having somebody to talk to was such a huge piece of that, because I had felt so much shame in my daughter's disabled and I'm able-bodied. My daughter's neurodivergent and I'm, from what I know, neurotypical, right? And so why do I get to be normal and her not? Why do I have more ease in my life and she doesn't? And a lot of like, it's my fault. She was born early, like so much blame. But nothing good was coming out of that self-blame. It was not supporting anybody. And so it was being real with myself, like what can I control? And what is literally truth, and separating like truth from what I had created in the stories that I had kind of manifested to support what I was choosing to believe. Um, and so that's kind of my journey. It's been a lot of unexpected twists and turns. A lot of things have been out of my control. But like stepping into what is in my control and having somebody first coach me into shifting my mindset and then learning for myself and becoming more empowered to actually follow through with those actions has shifted my life in so many great ways. And it has allowed me to show Presley that she is not a victim of her circumstances as well.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So there's a piece of my story. I just rambled on for however long, but that's
No. Oh, that's just it's amazing. Number one, you answered so many of my questions without me having to ask you.
you're welcome.
Um, you have a beautiful way of telling your story in a way that I can feel the pain that you went through, and you validate yourself in your story, while simultaneously showing so much self-compassion for the pain that it put you through, and the ability to see that, this victimhood, although it served a purpose for a time, um, has now transitioned into a place of, how can I transmute and alchemize this for not only myself but my daughter. And I just
Mhm.
think that is so beautiful, because she needs that self-awareness and that strength from you. And I truly believe that when you say, that why me feeling, I know it very well. Um, that the best gift that you can give both yourself and your daughter is the ability to say, why not me?
Mhm.
And to turn that into something.
Yes. And I think too, you know, I would have so many people coming to me and saying, I feel so bad for my child. I wish they had something different. And one of the most comforting things that I've come up with or I've heard is that we don't know their reality. We don't know their truth. So I don't know how Presley is experiencing her body, just like she doesn't know how I experience my body. I will never know a disabled body unless something happens. But like as of right now, I'm able bodied. I don't understand the way her mind works. I understand
Right.
the way my mind works. So who am I to say that that is lesser than or worse than? What I do know to be true is the circumstances in which our world is set up for people and how that creates barriers. So what I know to be true for Presley is that she does have accessibility barriers and that she will have to navigate them in her own way. I also have barriers that may not be physical, disability, neurodivergent. I have my own barriers. So it's not my job to fix Presley's situation for her. It's to help her navigate her situation. I can't take on her pain because I don't even know what her pain is. And I think that
Wow.
that's such a comforting perspective shift is like, it's actually not for us to take on. And I also find comfort in the idea of like, I don't know if you've ever like what your faith is or but I believe that there's a higher power. I don't know if it's Jesus, God, the universe. There's something bigger than us. And when
Agreed.
we come to earth, we sign up for our journey. And so my daughter, although I can't quite figure out why she chose this, she chose it. And I can see how it's impacted me. I have become a much better person. I have become way more aware. I have been able to forgive myself for how ableist and how ableist I still am towards disabilities and neurodivergence and medically complex individuals. And the way that I have literally been crushed and like burned to the ground to refigure it out in such a better space that allows me to support individuals in a way that I needed support. And for Presley, you know, for her to navigate life as her own life, right? And for me to just serve as an example of what it means to like take ownership of what you can control because she can't control her circumstances. She can, you know, navigate the barriers that come up with my support, but that's her journey too.
Mhm.
And I think there's so much freedom in like separating, like we identify so much as our children, like that's a piece of us. No, yes and no, but they are their own person too, and they have their own journey, just like we have our own journey. And who are we to say that their journey is harder than ours? There is no comparison, there just is.
Wow, what a powerful golden piece of advice to take away, because I mean it's not like, I feel like anybody listening can hear the clarity in that it is not your job to determine the way another person feels within their body, feels within their life. Like you said, there's clearly barriers, but there's barriers in every person's life. Oh man, that is just huge. I feel like if there's any takeaway to take away from Paige's podcast today, that's a
But
good one.
even in your own journey, you have come up across many barriers, I'm assuming, in your own journey with your health, right? And
Certainly.
so we have people with physical disabilities, we have medical situations, we have people who come from like quote broken homes, like non-traditional families, like everybody has something,
Yes.
right? And I think that's something like hopefully it softens you. I think for some people it hardens them.
Yeah.
But it's being real and like honest, okay, like yes, this fucking sucked. Like let's be honest. We don't like it. We don't have to
Oh
love
yeah.
it. But like
Hmm.
what can we take from this and how can we shift or evolve or become better because of it? And how can that give me like the compassion towards other people to know that like the person beside me on the spin bike or the person driving the car, you know, they're also navigating something really freaking hard that we know nothing about.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly, everybody has a thing. And I really wanted to point out how you said for some people it hardens them, for some it softens them. And I also love how you said earlier it was a choice that you had to make. And I think
Mhm.
those two things coincide beautifully. Um, that when these experiences happen to us, we can choose to get curious about how we can move this into a softening or something that gives us a sense of power. But it has to be a conscious choice, because without that choice, I think that often the hardening or the victimization is the more natural way to go.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And so that leads me into my next question, which is how have you transmuted and alchemized? Because I know you have done it in so many ways. I think about your accessibility, I think about your coaching, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah. So I think what has happened is, and I also want to give lots of credit to my mother. I
Beautiful.
think I have had a beautiful example of watching somebody experience pain and shifting it to become their greatest asset. There are so many people that I have witnessed this from, even in our community, and just seeing them really taking the shit and turning it into something good, right? Um, it's like a tree, we take in and give back the oxygen. Like there are so many people who are kind of paving the way and allowing others to really step into like this empowered space of what has happened to them. So I just like want to say that the reason I feel like I can and I do have the ability to alchemize this pain is because I've seen others bravely forge that before me and like give an example that it can be done.
And
Um,
now you're doing that now.
and I do that now. Yeah. So I will say sometimes I sit in my pain. I think that that's
Yes.
human.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I show up on social media ever since her diagnosis. I've slowly started feeling like I have a space to share um, Presley's what our reality is with a physical disability. Um, and with Presley, because she's so mild, I had to really remove the feeling that it wasn't valid because she wasn't very disabled. So because it was she's very mild in both her autism and her CP, like I don't deserve a voice because it could be worse, but it could also be better. So um, just allowing myself to be heard in it, even though I had to like move past that shame that like other people have it worse. There is no comparison. Um, and then I also started coaching, which has been so fulfilling and so great. And I get to work with people who are navigating diagnoses. So either like the bug is in their ear that a diagnosis might be happening, or they maybe have received a diagnosis, and helping them shift their perspective in their child's reality and their own reality. I've helped moms find themselves again in motherhood, like who they are outside of their roles, which is really exciting to watch them flourish and evolve into um, recreating like who they want to be, because it is like that beautiful opportunity to be like, okay, but actually, who are you? What do you want to be? And then speaking, I've done some speaking. I'm going to be sharing about I wrote a children's book. I keep forgetting that. I wrote a children's book.
Keep forgetting I wrote a book.
It was so great. Me, You, and the Nicu. So it's a children's book about the Nicu, and that has been a beautiful way to support families navigating the NICU. And I did a gift back to the NICU, so I would collect funds from individuals or businesses and then give books to people in the NICU. Currently, my book has a NICU grad program going down on in Colorado. So every NICU baby who enters the NICU leaves with the book, and all of the doctors sign it as they are in there. It's like a Dr. Seuss, the places you go for the NICU, which is something like I'm incredibly proud of. That I'm so proud that that is happening, and I'm humbled. Like that's just so amazing.
It's
Um,
so amazing.
yeah, my speaking and then coaching, and it just feels so good to do. Like it might serve others, but it also is such a huge piece of my own healing journey. Um, and the reason I can also coach and show up for others is because I get so much support. I lean into support all the time. I have someone hired to help me with my work. I have a coach to mentor me and support me in my own journey of evolving and becoming more empowered and really stepping into this role. And so um yeah, I think that's it.
Amazing. I think that's it. Oh, there are so many amazing things that you have taken out of this experience and truly become an alchemist in. Like I love the word alchemy. I
Yeah.
want it tattooed on my body at this point.
Hmm.
Because to take one thing and turn it into another without actually removing that thing is such a beautiful metaphor, because what you've
Hmm.
done is you've taken this experience, you didn't remove it, you changed it to make a difference in the world.
Hmm.
Like that's and in your world and in our world, in every world, and I think that is the true meaning of alchemy. And you have done just such a beautiful job. Um, I want to start wrapping up with a few questions. What is a piece of advice that you would give yourself who was, right at that stage where, the diagnosis has come and you're about to start this storm?
So if I'm talking to me,
To you. Yeah.
the Paige who just, oh, I can like picture her just leaving the room after somebody said your daughter has cerebral palsy. Um, and like the deep, deep fear in that. I would tell her that being scared is valid because it's really freaking scary.
Yeah.
But you're going to learn a new way of seeing the world because of it. The world is going to look
Beautiful.
different, and it's going to be for the better. And in rediscovering the world, to be kind to yourself, because you're going to notice things that you maybe don't love about the way that you saw the world before, or the way that you navigated through the world before. And just like be really compassionate with yourself. Please don't be hard on yourself, because I was way too hard on myself for too long about shame and guilt on how I conducted and behaved and saw things and responded to things. And you're learning, you're relearning. It's, you got to be compassionate in it all. And it's it's going to change you for the better. Like it really will.
It's beautiful. And I love the addition of compassion because it's
Hmm.
true. You know, I think about my own experience and the amount of times I was hard on myself because I wasn't getting it right. You know, that's really a beautiful addition.
And there's no book on this. Like
Yes. No
nobody
book.
tells you how to navigate any of this. And they say, have compassion. Like we can talk all these things, but like putting it into practice and like actually doing it is where like the really hard work comes into play. And I think that's why people harden. I think people harden because they can't take a moment to like be really honest with themselves and forgive themselves. And I think that hardness comes from like punishment, like self-punishment. Like you don't need to punish yourself anymore. You've already been through enough. Like let's give ourselves some grace, right? And I think it's the ability to give grace and compassion that allows us to soften in our circumstances.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree and like preach because that isn't that the truth. But why we harden is because we're unable or uninterested in going into that discomfort. It's, you know, a defense mechanism, right? Of saying like, I don't want to face this. So therefore, I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist.
Or like you're not worthy of like forgiving yourself. Like I
Also
think
that.
that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just wild. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's beautiful advice. Beautiful advice, you know, and one that you know, it's interesting. I even think about if my own voice came in and told me that advice, I'd hear it. But if anyone else told me that, I'd be like, you don't know what cancer's like, you know? And so so it just kind of goes to show the importance of showing these stories so that
Yes.
people can hear themselves in you.
And I think it's so important too to be connecting with somebody who has gone through it.
Hmm.
Um, there's just an unspoken understanding, right? And I think it's easier to apply advice from somebody who has navigated it because I know for me, like when Presley got her diagnosis, as like they were trying so hard to make me feel so okay. And I'm like, fuck off. Like, you really don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But now if I talk to somebody who had navigated a diagnosis, I'd be like, thank you. You're so brilliant. It's same advice. It's just like, but it's my own resistance to it, right? And feeling like it's not valid because it's not mine. And that's something I've had to unlearn too, is like your path and my path are different, but there are parallels and there
Hmm.
are mutual lessons to be learned. And your journey is just your journey and my journey is just my journey, and there is no better or worse than, there just like simply is, and everybody has it in their own way. Like we're all trying to just navigate all of this shit that comes towards us. We attract it, but like why, I don't know.
Yeah. That's not the truth. Yeah, I always said I would love to learn all of my lessons by drinking tea with a guru somewhere in the Himalayas, but that's not how it goes.
Well, if you're going, I'm coming with you.
Yeah, right?
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that
Yeah, but
easy,
seems to be
but
the
it is
hard
worth it.
way.
Yes.
Yes, it is worth every minute. Okay, well, I
Mhm.
guess my final question is how can people get in touch with you with all of the different things that they may have resonated with throughout this conversation?
Okay, so friends, you can find me on social media. I hang out on Instagram the most, and it's at Paige Bautz, PaigeBautz. You can find me on Facebook. My website is www.paigebautz.com. And yeah, just shoot me a message. Find me on my website. My email's in there somewhere, so you'll find it. And I'm here. I'm happy to connect. This is what I am so passionate about, is I think connection really is like the most crucial piece while navigating anything. And so if you need someone to just even listen or hold safe space, I can definitely do that for you.
Beautiful. Well, I wholeheartedly agree with every single thing that you said. And again, before we started recording, I wanted to honor you for your vulnerability. But I must say, I'm just wowed. I'm so grateful for everything that you've gone through, your ability to articulate it in such a beautiful way and show people how they can take their experience and turn it into a form of power. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for also leading by example.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, that's what we do, girl.
Yeah. Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you.